having federal troops come into his cities and the environs, and as a result has heard it said by the President of the United States that he should be jailed. Jacob, let me throw it over to you and the governor.
Chris, thank you so much. Governor JB Pritzker, thanks for joining us live on MSNBC.
How are you, Jake? We're good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. You know as well as I do, the President of the United States in the last 24 hours called for you to be imprisoned. I want to give you an opportunity. We've seen your reaction on social media, but I want to hear what you have to say back to the President of the United States.
Well, let's start with the idea that this is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged, he's insecure, he's a wannabe dictator, and there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me, so come and get me.
What does that mean exactly, Governor? Do you believe that he would follow through or that he'll chicken out? He basically said the same thing to Governor Gavin Newsom when I was with him at the height of the raids in the Los Angeles area. Governor Gavin Newsom is walking free on the streets of California. You think that he'll chicken out, or would he ever arrest you?
Well, you know the expression, Trump always chickens out, taco. And I got to say, he can't arrest. We've done nothing wrong here. And very importantly, it's Donald Trump that is breaching the Constitution, breaking the law. We're taking him to court, and I believe we're going to win.
Right now, in the Chicagoland area, the Texas National Guard is staging for a deployment that Governor Greg Abbott has ordered. What's the latest? Do you know where they are, what they're doing at this hour?
Well, to be clear, Donald Trump ordered it and federalized those troops, and Greg Abbott's just going along. This is the same guy, by the way, Greg Abbott, who last year complained when Joe Biden tried to call up his National Guard and actually wrote a letter, signed a letter opposing that. Now he's okay with it because why? He's a lackey of Donald Trump. So we know that the Texas National Guard has been staging in Illinois. They're not yet, as far as I understand, on the streets, but I want you to know, the federal government is not communicating with our state.
They're not talking to you about where these troops are going.
It's unconscionable. This has never happened before. They're calling out troops onto the streets of a state that doesn't want them, and they're not even telling us where they're going to go, what they're going to do. This hasn't happened, I don't think, since the Civil War.
Let me ask you about the lawsuit. You have sued to stop their deployment. You didn't sue to stop National Guard on a nationwide level. You sued to, correct me if I'm wrong, just the Texas National Guard.
Actually, no. We sued to stop him from calling out the Illinois National Guard, the Texas National Guard, and all other National Guards, because it is unconstitutional.
On the streets, even before the National Guard has made it to the streets of Illinois, you've got the Border Patrol. I was in Cicero yesterday, a 90% Latino population, and I watched as they not only pick people off the streets, but family members would come up to me and ask me where their family members were. I watched you with Rachel the other night here on MSNBC, and you were talking about how CBP has basically used the justification of the 100-mile border rule to allow the deployment here, and they're saying the border of Lake Michigan, the coast of Lake Michigan is the border. Lake Michigan, many people reached out to me and said, Lake Michigan doesn't even touch Canada. Are you thinking about suing to stop the deployment of the Border Patrol here as well?
Look, I think it's important to recognize that the Trump administration doesn't seem to respect any laws in the United States. They just do what they want to do, and they'll keep doing it unless someone stops them. Here in Illinois, we're stopping it. We're doing everything that we can to push back. And yeah, they've got armed, we're talking about automatic weapons and camouflaged, and they're not soldiers, right? These are ICE and Customs and Border Patrol agents that are roaming the streets of Chicago, in downtown Chicago. Why? It's a show. It's a show of force. And why does Donald Trump want to do that? And I've said this before, and I think it's important for people to hear it. He wants to militarize major cities across the United States, especially blue cities in blue states, because he wants us to get used to the idea of military on the streets, military troops, because there are 2026 elections. I believe that he's going to post people outside of ballot boxes and polling places, and if he needs to, in order to control those elections, he'll assume control of the ballot boxes and count the votes himself. He promised to do that. He threatened to do that back in 2020. Didn't get the chance to do it. I believe he would do it in 2026.
Do you believe we'll have free and fair elections in the United States of America during the 2026 midterms?
If we all stand up and speak out, we sure as heck will. And you see there are literally hundreds of people here who are standing up to speak out, and we've seen seen in the No Kings protests and others, millions of people standing up. We need more.
I asked you when I saw you the other day about if the president invokes the Insurrection Act. You said you use every tool at your disposal to stop the deployment of federal troops on the streets of Chicago and throughout your state. Are you willing to direct the state police to arrest any federal officials for what they're doing here?
Look, we don't break the law here in Illinois. I'm not going to direct our state police to break the law the way that Donald Trump directs people to break the law. What we will do is fight like heck in the courts. We have to rely upon judges. And by the way, a Trump-appointed judge made the decision on Oregon and the calling out of the California National Guard. Judges will and can do the right thing. We have to rely upon our courts. I'm not looking beyond that. We have to make sure that happens. But the other thing we have to make sure that happens is we elect good people to the Congress. Because in the end, if Congress is not asking questions, holding hearings, and holding the president accountable, he will just run roughshod across our states.
What's your message, final question, to the people here of the state of Illinois, the people of the city of Chicago, as this incursion by the federal government, these troops are on the streets of your state, of this city? What do you want them to do? There's a big protest scheduled for 5:30 p.m. tonight.
Well, first, we've made sure that people know their rights and they know how to find out what their rights are, because we don't want them picked up off the streets just because they're brown or black, just because they happen to be undocumented and have committed no crimes. Remember, he said he was going after the worst of the worst. It's not going after the worst of the worst when you're just literally stopping children who happen to be brown and asking them for papers as if, they're going to have proof that they're a U.S. citizen. So first, know your rights. Second, we want everybody to pull out their phones, an Android, an iPhone, whatever you've got, and film everything you see, because we take that to court. We also show it to the public. And it's one of the reasons that so many people are speaking up and acting up in order to fight Donald Trump, because they're seeing this is not the country that we grew up in. This is not the country that we want. And so that's very important. And then lastly, again, we got to take them to court. We got to win. It looks like we're going to do that.
For someone who has been threatened with arrest by the president of the United States in the last 24 hours, it's nice to see you out here on the street with all these people and in several vehicles, and they get out and they surround her. And look at this. This is the show of force. Same videographer right there in the background that watched the guys at the bakery I was at earlier in the day yesterday. Also surround one 53-year-old woman, Maricela, whose 54th birthday is on Halloween, October 31st. Her daughter Samantha told me she was waiting to buy her perfume until she got paid at the end of this pay period with her jobs in the mall to celebrate her birthday. And instead now she's going over to the Broadview ICE Detention Center, not knowing if she will ever live with her mom in the United States again after 30 years of her mother living in the United States of America after coming here from Mexico and raising a family here.
Yeah, the worst of the worst, as the president has described them. All right, David, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in Portland, because the president's also threatening the Insurrection Act potentially to use force in Portland after a federal judge there said he cannot use the National Guard.
Right, Katie. So just to set the scene briefly, behind me, behind that yellow police tape that the local police have set up, is the ICE facility that has been the site of a number of protests over the last few months. Now, Trump himself and several members of his administration have characterized what's happening here in Portland as an organized, violent rebellion or insurrection by, organized radical left terrorists. That is very much not what's happening. I think one of the things that sets Portland apart from other cities where we've seen troop deployments, LA, Chicago, et cetera, is that the gap between the way the administration is characterizing things here and the reality on the ground is really egregious. What you have is a tiny, really smattering of protesters who are here around the clock, who are very Portland, by the way, in the sense that they're sort of quirky and ragtag, not particularly committed to a especially clear ideology. And sometimes, of course, there have been demonstrations that have grown to several hundred people. There have, no one can deny there has been some property damage, some confrontation with security forces. But what local officials say is that all of the unrest and the activity that we've seen here is very much under control by the local authorities. Here in Portland also, you don't have the kinds of large, dense, immigrant-heavy, visibly immigrant-heavy neighborhoods and communities that you have in cities like LA and Chicago. So although there has been increased ICE activity in Portland, it's much more sort of dispersed and at a much smaller scale. So that's really what's at stake here with the legal battle that you mentioned, Katie, because the judge, the Trump-appointed circuit Circuit judge that blocked the troop deployment said that there is nothing on the ground factually to justify a troop deployment here, unlike in LA earlier in the summer, where, sort of deferring to the executive latitude on this matter, there was some colorable reason claim to say that troops were needed on the ground. Now, what I can say, Katie, is that there is a community here I've encountered a substantial community of military veterans who are opposed to this deployment, including one local city councilman that I interviewed yesterday that I want to just play you a little bit of the interview that I did with him. He's an Army veteran. He was a civil affairs sergeant in Afghanistan. I just want to hear a little bit of that. Take a listen.
Portland has a certain set of values, and top of the list is democracy and the ability to exercise your First Amendment right of free expression. And that feels under attack right now by a lot of Portlanders.
Wow, that was intense. What you just saw underscores an extraordinary moment in American politics, one that raises serious questions about the balance of power between federal authority and state governance. Governor JB Pritzker's statements highlight a fundamental tension: the deployment of federal troops, including the Texas National Guard and Border Patrol, into a state that explicitly opposes their presence. And this isn't just about politics. It's about the safety and civil liberties of everyday people in Illinois, particularly immigrant communities. Governor Pritzker's firm stance, "If you come for my people, you come through me," isn't just rhetoric. It reflects the seriousness of a state asserting its rights against perceived federal overreach. He emphasizes that the president is, in his view, acting outside constitutional boundaries and that Illinois is prepared to take the matter to court. The governor's message is clear: the rule of law still matters, and any attempt to bypass it will be challenged in the judicial system. What's particularly concerning here is the precedent this sets. Deploying armed federal agents into civilian neighborhoods under questionable legal justification echoes historical moments that most Americans would hope to avoid repeating. The imagery of Border Patrol and National Guard personnel on the streets, many of them armed and in camouflage, serves more as a show of force than a public safety measure. And the stakes extend beyond Illinois. Governor Pritzker warns that this could be a testing ground for future political control, including interference with elections. The human impact is real and immediate. Stories of families torn apart, like that of Maricela, a longtime resident detained despite living in the U.S. for decades, bring this issue home. It's a reminder that political power plays have real consequences for ordinary people. Finally, the governor's call to action is both practical and symbolic. Know your rights, document what's happening, and push for accountability through the courts and elections. This isn't just a story about Illinois. It's about the resilience of democracy itself. Watching this unfold, we're reminded that the defense of civil liberties is never passive. It requires vigilance, courage, and collective action.